Finally, we're shifting gears just a bit, but continuing our look at what can happen when the tried and true collides with innovation. Kara Vaninger visits a printmaker who does just that.
I like the presses that are a little bit grimy and older and have stood the test of time.
Sage Dawson spent months cleaning and rebuilding a 1922 Chandler & Price printing press. Before it arrived in her studio, the press had spent many silent years in the basement of an abandoned school.
The Springfield Art Museum actually funded the restoration of this press. They wanted to award someone some kind of financial support that could be integral in affecting their studio practice, and so it is already like hugely affecting my practice. To go from having almost no access to a press and now having access every day, it's incredible. And so now that I have this wonderful resource, I'm hoping that I can also kind of extend that to other people that would otherwise be in the very same position that I was in for years. A lot of these presses just get scrapped, so to see it go to somebody who's actually going to use it is pretty neat.
The antique press will allow Sage to explore more fully the art form that has captivated her since high school.
It's a very physical experience. It's a whole body experience. It's a lot like dancing with your press. I just kind of fell in love with the process. I was taking a lot of painting at the same time, which was fantastic because there's a certain kind of control and intentionality that you have. But with printmaking, it's very indirect. You're working with a matrix or a printing block, and you don't really know what the image is going to look like exactly until you print it. And I think it's something that's brought me back to printmaking over and over again because it's difficult. But that being said, I do think that the reason why most of my work is both an initial layer of printmaking, but also painting and drawing is because I really like the two together, the indirect with the direct mark.
Sage went on to pursue a master's degree at the University of New Mexico. Surrounded by big skies and dramatic landscapes, she used printmaking to explore the identity of the space.
There was a lot of like aerial images of Albuquerque. They weren't comprehensive in the sense of most maps that we know, like providing factual information of some sort. They were more interested in getting at how a place feels or how a place is remembered. So they were much more poetic.
The idea of experimental cartography became more defined once Sage finished her degree and began focusing on the neighborhoods, houses, and people she encountered as she lived and worked in different parts of the country.
One of the projects I was working on a few years ago was documenting an abandoned house. I was living next to this house in Springfield, Missouri. The front door blew open one day. Eventually I did go over and close the door, and the next week the door blew open again, and so I actually kind of poked my head in, decided to walk around the house and started photographing it. At one point I was creating these floor plans and trying to document everything that was left in the house. I got an email one day from a woman who had been searching old houses she had lived in as a child. My website came up because I was using the address of the house as a title for a lot of the pieces. We ended up connecting, and so there was this really nice sound piece that went along with the rest of the work in that exhibition of her talking about different memories associated with the house. Although I was dealing with, a structure and objects, really I think what I'm trying to talk about is what's actually invisible, which is people, really, who lived here? Why is this house the way it is now? That was a big question mark for me, and so to actually get that little piece of the puzzle was pretty incredible. I tend to work with a lot of heavy, bittersweet themes. The last body of work I did for the Springfield Art Museum, which was all about documenting Augusta, Georgia, and the neighborhood of Somerville. So Somerville was built as this sort of elite getaway, summer getaway, and so there are these extravagant houses built at the top of this hill. And then today, if you go down to the bottom, it's lower income housing, government housing projects. And so, that of course is a really common thing that's happening all over the States. It's a really nice next project to try to talk about, and a lovely sort of entry point into that larger, broader conversation about disparity and those sorts of issues. So this is a depiction of Somerville, but it's meant to be more of an icon. I'm referencing tombs or pyramids, but also trying to bring in the more natural landscape on the right side of the triangular shape. I think that approaching the work in a poetic way allows for the recognition that really difficult things are really complex.
Since the transformation of the press, Sage has started work on a new exhibit and is already sharing her treasured resource with other printmakers in the St. Louis arts community.
When you're in any kind of community that is generous and welcoming, then I think that rubs off on you. There's so many possibilities now. It's a really exciting time for my practice.